In this video I want to talk about variables, terms and equations. The reason why I want to do that is because although these are quite basic concepts that you need in mathematics, they are fundamental and you need to understand those concepts if you want to move on in mathematics and not being stuck in around class 6 or 7. Because these concepts will follow you even to if you go to college, and therefore it is really very important that you understand those and that you got those available as soon as you need them. Alright, so let's get started first with variables. So first of all, let me just start with normal examples. So imagine now you have one pen and two other pens. So these three combined are 3 pens. So that means 1 plus 2 equal to 3, 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. Those are just normal additions. You could also do that with multiplications. So as I already began with my example with the pens, so here you know that you have one pen and that you get 2 other pens. So that you have in total 3 pens. However, now we have an example where we know that we have 3 pens, but we don't know how many pens we get, but we know that we have 7 pens in the end. So for this unknown number of pens that we receive, I mean, we could even leave out the 7 first because you don't need them right now to understand the concept of a variable. But in this manner, you need to understand that you have something that you don't know. And a variable is just basically there to describe the unknown. That's basically it. Because the reason why you use letters to define variables is just basically because you cannot use numbers, obviously, and letters are then the easiest to describe it. And I mean, X is like the most common way you define a variable. So you see always like terms, which I'm going to talk about next. For example, 3x times whatever. So the x or a, b, c or whatever letter you might use for your variables is just basically there because you don't actually know the number that has to be put in there. But you have to work with it as a number. So following on this, the next concept I already touched upon is terms. So 2 plus 3 is a term, 5 times 6 is a term, 7 over square root of 25 plus 17 in brackets times 3 is a term as well. X over 6 squared minus 1 is also a term. What I want to say with that is basically that terms are mathematical operations. So that means for terms you can have numbers, you can have variables, and you can have operators. So that's basically it. Those are things that you have in terms, and terms just say, like I've already touched upon with our examples, 2 apples plus 3 apples. This is basically your term then. So there's nothing like, I mean, you can actually use then the results for those calculations, but you don't need to have results for it. So it's basically about the calculation itself. So this is what the word term describes. But then, moving away from the term, what is an equation then? Or what is the difference between a term and an equation? Because then the concept of both gets a bit more obvious. So you set something equal. That's basically what you say with the word itself, equation. So what does that mean? That means you say that something on the left of the equation sign has to be the same or equally the same as the other thing you have on the right side of the equation sign. With that being said, in mathematics it's always like you say the one thing you're calculating on the left has to be the same thing as you're calculating on the right. That means, for example, I can say 3 plus 5, you know that it is 8, right? But you can also say 4 plus 4 is equally the same as 3 plus 5, because both terms result to 8, and that means that they are equally weighted. Now, for example, then it gets trickier, and this is why I am even doing this, because, for example, you could go ahead and say, you could have a term like this, and for example, you could have a task where it said 3 plus x is equal to 2 times 4. So now you have a term on the left, you have a term on the right, and an equal sign in the middle. So that means that basically these two terms are equally. So what you do next is then you have to find out what x is. So, and there you see why we use variables, because we use variables for something that we don't know. We use terms to describe mathematical calculations, and we use equations to set terms equally and to find out our unknown variables. And that's already it. That's what variables are for, that's how you use terms, and that's how you use equations. Therefore, this is like a fundamental concept that you will need up to college, up to university, and that you should always be able to use. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out the other videos on my channel, and if you have any specific question or any specific mathematical problem, let me know in the comments down below, and I will make sure that I go through it and make a video about that.